It's Mary Maguire here, and this is day 5 of my week-long live stream. So every day this week, I've covered a different aspect of gender equality. So this is in celebration of International Women's Day 2025, which happens to be tomorrow, the 8th of March, Saturday. So I thought I'd do a run up to there. And they have a theme every week that every year, sorry, that they cover. And this year's theme is Accelerate Action. So I'm going to talk to you about how do we do that? How do we accelerate action? I think you know me. It's Mary Maguire here. I'm the founder of Agents to Change. We've been helping organisations to improve, engage, and become more inclusive since 2008. I'm also the author of a number of books, including the Edge series, which is the Female Edge, which helps women find success in the workplace, and the Inclusion Edge, which helps leaders to know how they can be more inclusive in their style. So I've talked about the reasons why it's important and what organisations need to think about in day 1. Day 2, I talked about the importance of creating safe and supportive spaces. Day 3, I talked about how we go out and recruit people. Yesterday, I talked about engagement processes. Today, what I'm going to cover is what are the levers that an organisation has that can really make a difference in terms of improving gender equity and gender representation. So we see them as slightly different things, but they are very much linked. How can they address them? And there's lots of levers. So the data that we talked about yesterday was very much about understanding underlying issues and themes and maybe addressing gaps. But today it's more about all of the other things we wrap around an organisation that could make a difference. So the one I'm going to start with is one I covered in brief earlier this week, but it's important again, is how we go out and find the people we want to do the jobs that we need doing in our organisation. So essentially how we recruit people. So if we think about the positions we have and thinking about, how we recruit in terms of the definitions of who are the people we want, what are the things we want them to do and where we want them to work, they can have big impacts in terms of the range of people who will apply. So there's various ways that organisations can improve the range and the attractiveness of that job to a much wider group of people than maybe the traditional trodden route of recruitment. They can think about where they go to recruit people. If they're using job fairs which are going to more traditional universities where there is potentially going to be more of an elite group of talent there, potentially more privileged, maybe they need to think about going to a wider range of career fairs. When they go out in terms of job requirements, thinking about the whole language that's used. Are we using language which is what we call gendered language, so has a clear preference for a male or a female? Are the job requirements putting expectations on the job holder which have been traditionally required but aren't so now? And also thinking about the process of the recruitment as well. So are we making it as easy as possible for people to apply, but are we taking out the bias by not making it clear the characteristics of the individual, so that's not part of the decision making process? And again, I think I shared some examples of organisations that have worked through that and had some huge improvements as a result. So just thinking about the whole way that you're going out to market and what you're doing can make a huge difference. The other thing to think about is when people come and see you, when they finally get to the stage where there's a face-to-face interview, and I know that we're doing an awful lot online now, so it might be a panel interview that's online. Is that panel itself a diverse panel? And are there ways you can maybe look at bringing in a more diverse panel? So organisations I've worked with where that's a challenge because maybe the only person who would consider diverse if it's male dominated is the woman might be from HR, might be looking to other organisations that can help. So professional bodies of that industry or local universities that might have diverse panel candidates that could actually help. So there's lots of other things that you can do to think about how could we diversify the panel. Why is that important? Well, there's a saying which is, "If I can't see it, I can't be it." And I think it really resonates a lot with a lot of people who feel they're in a minority, they're not represented, this organisation doesn't want me, my type of people aren't welcome. So there's all sorts of implied messages that we can get over by just making more of an effort in terms of the way we recruit. The second thing to think about is our pay process and strategy. So when we think about it, we think about pay. A lot of work has been done on thinking about gaps, so pay gaps. So gender pay gap reporting is now widespread across Europe and the UK, and that's certainly highlighting and showcasing maybe where traditional ways of creating pay decisions has led to some inequality. As I said before, it's a little bit more nuanced than that because it varies as you go up the organisation. So pay equity gap, sorry, pay gaps by level are really important to understand, not just pay gaps between men and women, but where they are in the organisation. And also in terms of particular subgroups in the organisation, where they may have one particular skill set, it means that they may have more males or females in that role. But ways that can be overcome, and this can be done in the recruitment process or it can be done in the overall reward strategy, is thinking about having transparent pay grades, and they're clearly promoted across the organisation, so everyone understands according to level what then pay bands are. Also going out to market as well and being really clear about that. Why is that important? I think there's a number of things. Traditionally, we have used questions such as, well, what's your current salary? And then made a decision of either matching or adding onto that current salary for an individual for a pay award. If somebody has been traditionally lower paid, even though they've been higher skilled, that perpetuates that pattern. The other thing we know around pay and pay awards is that men tend to be better at negotiating at the point of recruitment, but also in role than women are, who tend to be less willing or less confident in actually negotiating their pay and tend to accept pay as it is. Not all women, I hasten to add, but generally we see that as a gendered behaviour. So if we know that happens, if we're not transparent with our pay bands and work to them, we're perpetuating a gap that already exists. Another thing we can think about is the way that we promote people and the way that they understand succession. So if we think about performance and what we're looking at in terms of performance and track record, one of the challenges for many organisations is thinking about what's the language we use to define our performance criteria and the advancement criteria. So, what's the threshold behaviour that once you exceed that, you will be in what we'd call the promotion group, where we'd consider you a high potential or part of our succession planning. So thinking about what that language is, and what we know is traditionally performance management frameworks, succession criteria has had a considerable leaning towards what we'd call masculine behaviours and masculine traits. Even the language we use sometimes is that. And also what we're finding with it is that the ability to get the clarity and the support of understanding that criteria and getting support around it. Men tend to be better at networking and finding sponsors in the organisation who can help them with that. And women tend to assume that their track record, purely what they deliver, will be enough to talk for them and their performance and get them ahead. Now, in some organisations that's true, but I think that in many larger organisations, large complex matrix organisations, which a lot of people work in, that's not always the case. So thinking about making that really transparent and in a way that is communicated to employees so they understand it. Also, as well, thinking about where can we support, potential talent there that we think could do really well in higher levels roles, but they're not being either given them opportunities or there are some genuine skill gaps. So can we put together some leadership and development programs that really help people, particularly women in this case, but other minority groups as well, to develop further their leadership skills or their confidence or their engagement skills so they're more likely to be able to succeed in the organisation. And then going back from that, we need to think about the arrangements around work. So, COVID made a huge difference to the way we work. So, pre COVID, office based work was the norm, and it was expected that people were in the office at least 4 days a week, often 5 days a week, and maybe had one day off every other week or every month where they could be at home working. But it wasn't really seen as something that was baked in. We know that's changing. We know that an awful lot of organisations have moved now to having hybrid as part of the way that they work. I know also some organisations have gone to office only based roles as well, but they tend to be still in the minority. Here we are in 2025. But what can we do to actually make that work? What we know is that women often have a much higher percentage of the caring responsibilities and the household responsibilities than men. It's about 65% to 35% men. So that means that they have to balance childcare, they potentially have to balance other caring responsibilities as well as other things around the house that need to be done. So we need to think about, well, what is the flexible working arrangements that need to be offered? And to a certain extent, hybrid helps, but actually being able to have conversations where in a team, in an organisation, there may be some flexibility around certain people say, "Oh, I can never get into work before 10 a.m. on a Monday, but the rest of the week I can always be in by 9. Can we just accommodate that because there's other things I have to do?" And most organisations can find ways around that. So being able to ask and being able to get the support around some arrangements, yes, still deliver, yes, still do the hours. It's not about that, but it is about providing flexibility. Similarly, parental leave is really important, both for men and women. We know that's made a big difference to both male and female workers, where they've been able to take time off at the birth of a child or the adoption of a child, where they can actually um, uh, balance things at home, find their routine, settle the child before usually the father goes back to work earlier, and then the mother, when she's ready, returns to work. And then that leads to another thing that's really important is terms of how we can, in the culture, uh, provide some more support. And one of the big ones, one of the big transitions is women returning to work after a long time in maternity leave. So that can be anywhere between 9 and 12 months that they've been away from work. If it's their first child, they've had to transition into a parental role. They've had to work through all of the challenges of looking after a newborn baby, and then coming back to work. We often know that they feel less sure of themselves than they did before they left, and less confident in their roles, and more nervous about being at work because there's this energy that goes back to wondering that the child that they've left in childcare is okay. So how can we provide return to work support that allows them to feel comfortable, understand there's some flexibility around things, has somebody that they can talk to, or indeed employee resource groups. If you have women at or mother at groups in your organisation, they can go to them and they can talk to people and just get some peer support to help them through some of the difficulties. Again, this is not saying that they don't come back and do their work, but it's about by offering some flexibility in the organisation to the realities of working and raising a family. It can make a big difference to people's confidence, but also their performance. We know that they do very well and they ramp up very quickly when they return. And finally, the area that you can have an impact on as an organisation is thinking about that, the wider community that you touch. And again, that there's various levers that organisations can pull in helping improve the outcomes for women in the community at large. One of them is just thinking about your suppliers. Who do you go to for the regular supplies of events, for marketing, for PR, for catering, for cleaning or other provision of stationery, so on and so forth. Lots of things. Can organisations stop going to the tried and tested suppliers that they've always known that maybe are part of a large group, and maybe think for some, not all, but some of their procurement, going out of the way to find more diverse and minority owned businesses, women owned businesses, black owned businesses, LGBT owned businesses, but businesses out there that can still supply an excellent quality of service to meet your needs, usually at an even better price, but also helping to share the economic um, prosperity with them. And the other thing that organisations can do is look at their own vendors, where you've got what we call level one vendors. So they're the people who do big infrastructure support for you. They might be ones that you then help to help to create a policy with, where they have fair pay practices, where they have fair parental leave practices, where they have clear equity pay gap reporting processes and action plans to actually address needs. So putting pressure on your buying power on your vendors to help them increase and improve the gender equity in their organisations as well. So that's it. That's my final one of my week of IWD live streams. I hope you found it useful. As I said, there's an awful lot you can do from a policy and process point of view, from a people point of view, from a systems and data point of view. And it's just a matter of maybe taking some time thinking about that and making them improvements. So I hope you found that useful. If you want to know any more about the work that Agents to Change does in helping organisations improve inclusivity, or providing coaching programs for leaders or coaching programs for women, then get in touch. It's Mary at agents2change.com. I'm wishing you a great day, and I want to thank you very much for your time.